Architect Divya Chakravarti. She completed her undergraduate studies from SRM University and she went on to pursue her master's in historic preservation and urbanism and study of the built environment from the University of California, Los Angeles. She went on to work for the Department of Planning and Preservation for the city of Pasadena, California. She also did a brief stint of work for Historic Scotland, Edinburgh, UK. She had also worked on conservation projects like Kalsa Mahal, Gokhale Hall in Chennai, and Marimalappa Educational Trust in Mysore. She is currently working as a director of Samrakshan Heritage Consultancy. She is also a co-founder of the Artisan Reprisal of Traditional Materials, Method and Technology. She goes on to conduct workshops to revive traditional and lost methods of construction.
Welcome to the UGC lecture series for Bachelors of Architecture. The subject we are discussing is environmental science. The topic we will be discussing is environmental pollution. In this lecture, we will be looking into disaster management and certain case studies regarding pollution. The different nodal agencies for disaster management, the agencies in the government who are the first rescuers to any disastrous situation across the country. You have for floods the Ministry of Water Resources, cyclones you have the Indian Meteorological Department, earthquakes we have the Indian Meteorological Department again, epidemics is the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, avian flu like bird flu and all those diseases that are there is the Ministry of Health as well as the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry. So, some of these departments have an interrelationship as well, because some disasters or some natural epidemics are a product of a natural disaster that is primarily occurred. For example, a series of floods could have affected a particular area, as a result of which they would have stagnant waters in different parts of the city. As a result of that, there would be mosquito breeding and other related sanitation problems, and because of these issues, there could be an epidemic that is resulting in that area like dengue, malaria, cholera, something like that. So, when such things occur in higher percentages in such areas, then the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare as well as the Ministry of Water Resources will have to be in cohesion to ensure that these incidences can be reduced or avoided. And the Health and Family Welfare will ensure that the governmental hospitals have the sufficient backup with respect to the number of doctors, nursing staff, medical aid as well as medicines that are available. All of that has to be ensured. At the same time, the Ministry of Water Resources will constantly have to ensure that flooding related activities and relief work has to go on side by side. So, a number of these agencies have to work in parallel or sometimes in cohesion to ensure a smooth relief process. Other disastrous elements like chemical disasters, you have Ministry of Environment and Forests, industrial disasters is Ministry of Labour, rail accidents is Ministry of Railways, air accidents Ministry of Civil Aviation, fire Ministry of Home Affairs, nuclear incidents is Department of Atomic Energy, mine disasters is Department of Mines. New directions for disaster management in India. The National Disaster Management Authority or the NDMA has actually been set up as the primary apex body for disaster management in India, with having the Prime Minister as its chairman. The disaster management authorities will be set up at state, district levels to ensure that the process is smooth and hierarchical, and these are headed by the chief ministers, collectors or the Jilla Parishad chairman respectively. The new directions that have been given for disaster management in India, a National Disaster Mitigation Fund will be administered by the NDMA. States and districts can also administer mitigation funds. A National Disaster Response Fund will be administered by the NDMA through the National Executive Committee. States and districts will administer State Disaster Response Fund and Disaster Response Fund respectively. So, what actually happens is The national bodies will administer certain amount of funds depending on budget to that particular state, and then the state besides the national fund will have its own funds allocated for the same, and cohesively they will disperse these funds to the public. Simultaneously, there are number of NGOs who are constantly running, who collect funds from private individuals who are interested in contributing, and relief funds will be collected from across the country and globe to ensure that relief material either in cash or in kind reaches the people who are in need. Besides this, you have 8 battalions of National Disaster Response Force or NDRF, which are being trained and deployed with CSSR and MFR equipments and tools in 8 strategic locations. A National Disaster Management Policy and National Disaster Response Plan will also be drawn up. So, a management policy actually gives us the direction of how things need to be done, versus a response plan is more immediate, as in right after the impact, the next few days and the week is very crucial. The immediate relief that doesn't get reached, if that does not happen, then the repercussions are far more severe and massive. Instead, if an impact is felt and the next 24 hours to 48 hours, which is the golden period, if the response plan is suitable and adequate and immediate relief is reached to all the victims and the surrounding people, then the disaster management policy can smoothly shift in and ensure that there is no hindrance in manifestation of the funds or in the relief procedures. Future directions: we need to encourage and consolidate knowledge networks, mobilize and train disaster volunteers for more effective preparedness, mitigation and response. The typical volunteers are NSS, NCC, Scouts and Guides, NYK, Civil Defence and Home Guards. Increased capacity building leads to faster vulnerability reduction. Learn from best practices in disaster preparedness, mitigation and disaster response. And another important thing here comes into public education. If a particular area is constantly impacted by, say, floods or earthquakes, then right from the level of schools, colleges and even offices, frequent drills have to be incorporated such that the students, the general public, do not face the situation with fear in the first second itself. They have some basic idea of how to deal with it. If it is a man-made disaster which cannot be predicted or they cannot be prepared for, it is a different scenario. But certain natural disasters occur again and again in the same areas. For instance, it could be the floods of Mumbai after every monsoon, or the floods in Andhra Pradesh and Orissa. So, all of these are typical events that occur once a year at least. So, if the general public is made aware and taught of what needs to be done immediately if there is a problem like this, say evacuation plan, or if there is a plan where they have to meet somewhere for safety reasons, an assembly point, those drills have to be conducted in schools, offices and even people in homes have to be taught that these are the ways where you can prepare yourself and keep yourself and your family safe, at least for the immediate relief, before immediate relief reaches your place. And another important thing is to learn from surrounding disastrous areas, let it be across the globe. With today's technology, we know what is happening in the neighboring country within a span of few seconds. So, when we see how they are getting prepared for, say, or how they are dealing with a tsunami or an earthquake, we too can learn from them and incorporate these methodologies, even let it be at a government level, at a non-governmental agency level or even at a community level. Invest in preparedness. Investments in preparedness and prevention, that is mitigation, will yield sustainable results rather than spending money on relief after a disaster. Most disasters are predictable, especially in their seasonality and the disaster prone areas which are vulnerable. Community must be involved in disaster preparedness. Best practices. On November 12, 1970, a major cyclone hit the coastal belt of Bangladesh at 223 kilometers per hour with a storm surge of 6 to 9 meters height, killing an estimated 500,000 people. Because of the cyclone preparedness program, the April 1991 cyclone with a wind speed of 225 kilometers per hour killed only 138,000 people, even though the coastal population had doubled by that time. Because they were prepared, evacuation measures were swifter and the impact was definitely lessened. In May 1994, in a similar cyclone with a wind speed of 250 kilometers per hour, only 127 people lost their lives. In 97, in a cyclone with a wind speed of 200 kilometers an hour, only 111 people lost their lives. Of course, it might seem wrong to say that even this loss of life should have been stopped, but at least there is a decrease in the number of people who are losing their lives, which means the cyclone preparedness program or the disaster management plan is working at a level definitely. Of course, the effectiveness of it depends on the way the people follow it. People might decide to go back to get their things. So many other factors are also involved. So, if the program is prepared in a stipulated fashion and if it is followed religiously by everyone, then there will be minimal impact to the loss of life, and things and everything like that can be recovered based on time. There are certain things which we cannot put a value to, versus when you have a certain amount of property that is damaged, that can have an assigned value to it and it can be refurbished in no time. Future directions: we need to mobilize stakeholder participation of self-help groups, women's groups, youth groups, Panchayati Raj institutions. Anticipatory governance, that is simulation exercises, mock drills and scenario analysis. Indigenous knowledge systems and coping practices. Living with risk, community-based risk management. New possibilities: National Urban Renewal Mission for 70 cities. Recent experience of unprecedented extreme weather conditions in a few major metros and mega cities. 100,000 rural knowledge centers or IT kiosks. These are need for spatial e-governance for informed decision making in disaster prone areas before, during and after disasters. Disaster nursing. This can actually be defined as the adaptation of professional nursing skills and recognizing and meeting the nursing, physical and emotional needs resulting from a disaster. And in a disaster prone area, what can be done as a preparedness measure is recruiting certain volunteers who can be taught basic first aid, basic CPR, life revival skills, and certain drills can be taught to certain volunteers so that in times of emergency they too can help the people till the relief people like the NDRF and other people can join in to help the victims of the particular disaster. So, it is very crucial that the community is involved in every level, because when a particular impact or a disaster hits a particular place, it takes at least a couple of hours to mobilize any movement and activity, and those hours can actually be quite crucial in a person's life. So, if we have volunteers, say doctors, nurses, besides them, even if common people could help with basic first aid or certain measures, it is going to be very crucial as well as essential. Moving on to a major case study of pollution, River Ganga's pollution, which is a matter of great concern in today's context. If you actually look about the river Ganga, it is considered one of the most sacred rivers to Hindus, and it is also a major lifeline to millions of Indians who live along its banks and depend on it for their everyday needs. Ganga is a trans-boundary river of India and Bangladesh. It is obviously the longest river in India. There are 2,525 kilometer long river, rise in the western Himalayas in India and flows south and east through the Gangetic plains of North India and finally into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges basin is most heavily populated river basin in the world with more than 400 million people and a population density of 1,000 inhabitants per square mile. So you can see the pressure that is there on this river. Qualities of the Ganges. According to Hindu mythology, the Ganga river actually has certain great medicinal qualities. A Ganges river is an ideal biodiversity area. It has more than 140 fish species, 90 amphibian species and 5 area hitch support birds which is found nowhere else in the world. So, they come across during migratory and hibernatory phases. The Ganga river produces topsoil and fertile soil in the world. According to studies reported by environmental engineers of IIT Roorkee, the Ganga has decomposed the organic waste 15 to 25 times faster than any other river. Ganges river has a legendary medicinal qualities as compared to other Himalayan rivers. According to NBRI or the National Botanical Research Institute, Ganga water has antibacterial quality as well. It found in research that E. coli lives only 3 days in the Ganges water due to the bacteriophage qualities of the water. Facts about river Ganga pollution. It is considered one of the most polluted rivers. Deadly poisonous water in some areas. Toxins are found in water and it is some turned into sewer in certain parts. The present state of the Ganges. At the time the holy Ganga has become polluted, there are 29 cities, 70 towns and thousands of villages along the Ganges bank. The Ganga was ranked among the 5 most polluted rivers of the world in 2007. It is found in research the fecal coliform levels in river near Varanasi is more than the 100 times the official Indian government limit. And one of the main causes of this is the rites that is performed in the Ganges river. Many people believe that the ashes, if deposited in the river, is very good as a part of a religious belief. But besides the ashes, many people even directly throw the dead bodies into these rivers, which causes a lot of problem, especially when the passage of river is very slow. When the passage of river is very slow, it leads to sudden decomposition, very slow decomposition, which leads to foul smell, other disease penetrating bacteria and general pollution is caused in the river banks. And as and when the population density increases, the pressure that is felt in that part of the river is far more than in the other parts of the river. And the Ganges river, when we are talking about the length of it in its entirety, the entire river is obviously not polluted. In a span of 2,500 odd kilometers, there are portions of it, because there are about 29 major cities along the banks, there are portions of it that are polluted, but there is also a state in many people's mind that Ganges is one of the most polluted rivers in the world. It is true to a certain extent because we consider it one of our primarily annual rivers in our country. It is a perennial river. It constantly has water, but because of certain man-induced activities, this condition is drastically changing. You can just see even in the image here, it does not look like a river, but more like a sludgy pond, and that is because of the affluence in the river. The river, the best part of having a river is it constantly moves and therefore should not have any stagnant mosquitoes or any such breeding properties. But in such cities, when the water is so slow and the impurities are so high, it no longer remains a river and it becomes a sluggish pond-like body, and lot of infestation, let it be bacterial, viral, so many other properties come into being. The toxic cocktails in Ganga and throughout the Indian river system are ghastly. Heavy metals include chromium. You have toxic acids like arsenic and plutonium. Human and animal excreta. In many places, the river is hardly more than a sewer. Main sources of Ganga's pollution: industrial drains, city drains, religious tourist activity in Varanasi especially, construction activities along the coast of this river, agriculture autoflow, like especially when there is too much of pesticides, fungicides, all of that also adds to the pollution. and this actually kills the fish and the water body and other marine life, and once the marine life dies, then the impurities never go away. Fish is the main consumer of most of the impurities, but if once the fish starts dying, then the impurities remain forever. Domestic activities like those of washermen, cremation related rituals with like vehicular washing, dumping of solid waste, etc. Industries are a main source of pollution of the Ganges. You can see the dark black effluents which is filled with chemicals getting poured into the pure Ganges at this point. Here you can see the river is actually not polluted. It is in one of its purest forms. But there are these sources in many parts of the river that add on to the pollution, and these factories don't exist near a city or anything. It could be in the outskirts of the city and cannot be monitored well. According to the data, out of 146 industries along the river Ganges between Rishikesh and Prayagraj, in this 146, 144 are present in Uttar Pradesh and only 2 in Uttarakhand. A major pollution industries on the Ganges are the leather industries near Kanpur. Other industries like tanning industry, pharmaceutical companies, electronic plants, textiles, paper industries, fertilizers discharge different types of chemical and organic effluents into the river. This is a particular channel which showing the confluence of tannery effluents at Kanpur. The river here you can see there is a drastic change of color as well as in the quality of flowing water. It is pretty much stagnant in this portion. This is like a channel from the factory versus the river over here. Certain other alarming facts: every year millions of Indians are affected by waterborne diseases like diarrhea, viral hepatitis, dysentery, typhoid, cholera, gastroenteritis, and people are blinded by the trachoma because they can't bathe in clean water. One person in the Ganga basin dies every 60 seconds because of diarrhea, and 8 out of every 10 Indians suffer from dysentery each year. 80% of all health problems in India and 1/3 of all deaths are said to be attributed to the river Ganga and its pollution. River contamination leaches into the groundwater system, affecting water supply and nearby agriculture as well. Effects of Ganga pollution. The effect of pollution in the river is directly observed in the fish, and certain fish can actually become extinct. Due to the pollution in Ganga, the Ganga dolphin population of only 2,000 and is now considered an endangered species. The effect of pollution increase the organic matter in the river water, presence of toxic chemicals in water, impairs light penetration due to the oil spill. The effect of water pollution strongly impacts the balance of nature, which ultimately impacts humans, harms the food chain, that is breaks the link of food chain, spread of diseases, causes cholera, typhoid infection, diarrhea, etc., affects body organs. The consumption of highly contaminated water can cause injury to the heart and kidneys. What steps have been taken till now? In 1985, the government has launched the Ganges Action Plan in the 29 cities in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. As a result of the public interest litigation filed by Eco-Friends in 1997, several landmark orders have been passed to address critical issues of Ganges pollution, including closure of 200 odd polluting industries and initiation of action to address the limitations of this action plan. Some other measures that have been taken: deep water wells have been drilled to provide fresh water for villages where Ganga contamination has entered the groundwater system, causing skin diseases and other ailments. Public awareness drives are underway both in Varanasi and Kanpur, dealing with the root causes of pollution and the lack of fresh drinking water. Conducting of workshops by NGO in the Ganges Basin cities, dialoguing with the local council people and other groups about their rights under the 74th Amendment of the Indian Constitution. This enables local councils to themselves decide what sort of environmental actions they want to take. But besides the government and the NGOs, it's very crucial that a lot of money as well as time is invested in public awareness and education, because any number of things that can be done by the government can be done for the industries to ensure that their effluents are reduced. But what about the increasing number of population and the people who are directly polluting the river? That can only happen through education and public awareness, and strict legal action can also be taken against people who are found polluting the river. At the end of this lecture, we have looked into disaster management plan and pollution case studies. We have looked into the Ganges River and the pollution of the Ganges River basin. At the end of the lecture, we should be able to answer the following questions. What are the nodal agencies set aside for floods and mine disasters? What is the role of the NDMA with respect to disaster management? What new possibilities are available with respect to disaster management? With the help of a case study, discuss how pollution can alter the lives of people completely. That brings us to the end of this lecture. Thank you.